Hello and welcome back to the Daily Express's Royal Roundup. It is the first Royal Roundup of 2023 and I'm delighted to be joined by GB News' Cameron Walker, the Royal reporter there. Welcome on board, Cameron.
Thank you very much, Pandora. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Of course, it was a very busy New Year for the Royals last year, and we're going into an even busier year with a certain book coming out very shortly. Well, a couple of preview interviews have been done for this book for promotion, which Harry has chosen to be interviewed on both sides of the Atlantic. I think we've got a clip of one of them before we go into the chat.
One of the criticisms that you've received is that, well, okay, fine, you want to move to California, you want to step back from the institutional role, why be so public? You say you tried to do this privately.
And every single time I've tried to do it privately, there have been briefings and leakings and planting of stories against me and my wife. You know, the family motto is never complain, never explain, but it's just a motto. And it doesn't really hold.
There's a lot of complaining and a lot of explaining.
Endless.
Private being done through leaks.
Through leaks. They will feed or have a conversation with the correspondent, and that correspondent will literally be spoon-fed information and write the story, and then at the bottom of it they will say that they've reached out to Buckingham Palace for comment. But the whole story is Buckingham Palace commenting. So when we're being told for the last 6 years we can't put a statement out to protect you, but you do it for other members of the family, there becomes a point when silence is betrayal.
There we go. Strong words. Silence is betrayal. And that did hit a few of the front pages. So Cam, obviously it begs the question, doesn't it? How does this leave relations then with Prince Harry and his father and his brother and co of the royal family?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me, Pandora, if it was a pretty strained relationship by this point. I mean, most of the allegations which Prince Harry has said within that CBS trailer is talking about palace leaking and planting of stories very similar to what we saw in the Netflix documentary series in December, but clearly criticizing the institution in which your members of your own family, your brother, your father represents is not going to go down too well, particularly with if he does genuinely want to reconcile with his family, because he said in the ITV trailer, the other interview he has done to promote this new book, Spare, he says he wants his father back, he wants his brother back. But the two can't really go hand in hand. You can't criticize the institution, but also want to make amends with your family.
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? And of course, we won't know really the details of the book until next week. But these interviews, I'm sure, do give an indication of to what the book will be speaking about. To your knowledge, Cam, obviously it's been Christmas. Christmas is a time of getting together for families and perhaps a couple of arguments along the way for lots of families across the UK, I'm sure, after spending lots of time together. But we don't think that Harry did see his family over Christmas, did we?
Yes, that's right. We don't believe that Harry or Meghan came across the Atlantic to see Harry's family. From my understanding from various reports, that the king did extend some kind of olive branch to Harry and Meghan over the festive period. Whether or not that was a specific invitation to join the rest of the family at Sandringham at Christmas, we can only speculate on that. We don't have any confirmation, as I'm sure, Buckingham Palace would never confirm private details. But clearly, I think from watching the Netflix documentary series in December, it was pretty clear that there were strange relationships. If you remember, there was that scene following the Oprah interview where Prince Harry receives a text from his brother, Prince William. Yes. Now, we don't see what's on that text, but from Harry's reaction, he was clearly very distressed by what his brother had said to him.
So there obviously is some kind of communication. To what extent, though, as you said, it will be private matters only. But we think that they didn't see them at Christmas. Obviously, it begs the question then, when will Harry see his father and brother? And will we know about it?
Well, that's the question, isn't it, Pandora? We know Buckingham Palace has indicated, or at least sources within Buckingham Palace, that the king really still loves Prince Harry, his son, of course, his second son. But in terms of a physical meeting, I mean, clearly the Queen's death kind of forced a meeting upon them. And we saw Prince William extend an olive branch to his brother by doing that joint walkabout outside Windsor Castle. But to be honest, Pandora, I reckon courtiers and members of the royal family are waiting to see what is in A, these interviews, which are being aired on Sunday, but B, the details of his memoir, Spare, which is being published on the 9th of January, which I think is this Tuesday coming. Because, of course, if Prince Harry has made a damning allegation against one of members of his family, or is really, slating them, then clearly that's going to really strain relationships even further. And also because of those private conversations which Prince Harry talks about in the Netflix documentary series, which it appears he's going to talk about further in this in his book, the family feel that they can't trust him, because what could they say to him in private may well end up in an interview later down the line. So that's the issue.
Janet said, pity he didn't concentrate on bettering himself instead of spewing nastiness. One day he's going to be sorry for his actions and words. To Harry himself, there is a saying, what would your mother say, Harry? I mean, obviously, Janet has expressed her opinion there, and that is just her opinion. But lots of people in the UK feel like, they've very much grown up with Prince Harry. They've known him for many, many years, and know they might not know him on a first name basis, but they've obviously been there through quite tragic and moving events in his life, which he's obviously spoken about in this book. Is there anything else within the book, Cam, which we might find out more information that we haven't heard about on things such as Spotify, Oprah, Netflix? What's next?
Well, from the blurb, we get a pretty clear indication that Prince Harry is going to talk at length about his experience of his mother's death and having to walk behind his mother's coffin in front of millions of people on television and thousands of people lining the streets of London. He was a very young boy when that happened. He did an interview in 2017 where he said that no child should be put through that under any circumstances. So I'm sure he's going to go into a lot more detail about that and how that trauma really has kind of carried on through the rest of his life. Another thing that from reports which we see, it seems to be suggested from these trailers actually, is he's going to go in pretty hard on his brother, Prince William. There's one report actually that suggests that he's going to talk at length about the Sandringham summit, which is when he thrashed out this so-called divorce deal when he was deciding to step back as a senior working member of the royal family and move to California with Meghan. And we saw in the Netflix documentary series, Prince Harry described that Sandringham summit, that Prince William shouted and screamed at him. So perhaps we're going to get more details on exactly what Prince William said to Harry within that meeting. We're hearing Kate isn't going to get off very lightly either, but the people who are perhaps more surprisingly are going to be left alone a bit more is the king himself and the Queen consort. We know that King Charles's red line is Camilla. If Prince Harry criticizes Camilla in any way, I think that is when King Charles will take more firm action, perhaps against his son. Clearly, this is all unconfirmed, and the palace themselves don't even know what's in the book. But for now, they're very much remaining silent.
And that must be quite difficult as well, to have all of this on a worldwide stage. In fact, they are brothers at the end of the day, and a father and son. William has stayed quiet on this. Cam, you report on the royal family every day. Do you think William will find this quite difficult to stay quiet on quite dramatic accusations?
Yeah, I speak to palace courtiers, Pandora, on a regular basis, and from what I gather and from what I see, their strategy of never complain, never explain is working. You only have to look at the recent opinion polls. The latest YouGov poll on popularity of the royal family indicates that Prince Harry and Meghan's popularity has plummeted over recent months, but the rest of the royal family pretty much are staying the same. They're not going up, but they're certainly not plummeting as much as Harry and Meghan are. I mean, on the one hand, on another positive for the royal family by not commenting officially on this is they get to focus on their engagements, and it doesn't cheapen the royal family by having this Hollywood-style tit-for-tat argument with Prince Harry across the Atlantic. But the issue for Buckingham Palace is that we're only getting one side of the story, and that is Prince Harry's version of the truth. So it's a very fine balance that Buckingham Palace is having to tread here. I suspect if there's a specific damaging allegation that just simply can't go unchallenged, then Buckingham Palace will respond. We saw the late Queen say recollections may vary following the Oprah interview. But I don't, unless there is a really specific damaging allegation, I don't see them changing their plan anytime soon.
Okay, interesting. So it just depends on what they say in the book. Pierre Hope said, I can't wait for the book Spare. Best wishes in New Year 2023 for everyone. And that's true. I mean, you've got lots of fans who say, you know, come on, Harry, enough is enough. But you've got lots of people who are very much looking forward to the book. You said that their popularity has plummeted. But also lots of people are talking about them still, despite the fact that this is, you know, one of many, many interviews that they've given. Prince Harry is speaking his truth, says Hantu, not his truth, just plain truth. So do you think they're aware of the polls, or as Meghan once said, it's all just noise? It's all just noise. She famously said. What do you think, Cam?
They're very much aware of the opinion polls within the United Kingdom. I think to some extent what Meghan thinks in terms of it being just noise, I think she's perhaps right. There is a lot of noise, but there are still fundamental issues, I think, with the way Harry and Meghan have gone about their media strategy. And what I mean by issues is just seeing the public reaction to that, both sides of the Atlantic. They have an incredible PR team in the United States, and they just have one here, actually, to some extent, with Kensington Palace. We don't know if they just scroll through Twitter every day reading comments, but it's very clear to see that Prince Harry is very much waging a war against the media, particularly British tabloids, because for a majority of the Netflix documentary series, he was very much slating the British media and their strategy towards Harry and Meghan. But now he's kind of dragging Buckingham Palace into it by alleging that Buckingham Palace is colluding with the British media to make him and his wife look like villains and the rest of the royal family look good. So yes, I think they are aware of the media strategy, but I honestly don't think they care too much at this point, because I think if they did genuinely care about the opinion polls, about what was written about them, they would have changed strategy by now, because since Oprah 2021, it's pretty much the same arguments that they've been making.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I think we've got a few more comments. Of course, it's not the truth, says Sarah. Harry and Meghan lie the whole time, and it's easy to prove that. So, Cameron, from a royal reporter's perspective, obviously lots of accusations have been thrown out, especially towards the media. Obviously, we're journalists who work within the royal reporting world, per se, amongst other things. What lies have been told then that Sarah's indicating there? Have there been any?
Well, we don't know is the true answer. I think we have to take what Harry and Meghan perceive as their truth, as what they genuinely believe as the truth. I think what's weakened Harry and Meghan's arguments is the fact that they throw all these accusations out there. There's a lot of hot air within these accusations, a lot of anger, particularly from Prince Harry, a lot of distress from Meghan. But their arguments weakened because they're not backing up allegations with specific facts or specific evidence. So, okay, with Oprah, for example, they accused an unnamed member of the royal family of questioning what color their son's skin would be when he was born. Clearly a very damaging accusation for Buckingham Palace, but they don't give us who it was, what time it happened, who else was in the room. So it's all of these like secondary questions which come up following an accusation from a Duke and Duchess of Sussex. But like I said, there's clearly some difficult issues which Harry and Meghan clearly feel they have been put through, but we're only getting one side of the story. So I don't think we can accuse them of lying, but equally, there's always two sides to every story.
Yeah, and of course, with Buckingham Palace staying silent, it doesn't exactly help things, does it? In the sense of proving anything. Obviously, their argument would be to the situation that you just referenced would be, well, that's a private matter, but then they're bringing private matters to the public forum. So yes, difficult. Okay, we've got a couple of polls on some of the subjects that we're speaking about because we wanted to hear what you guys thought. So I'll bring up a couple. Do keep the comments coming. Do you feel sorry for Prince Harry since he has opened up in more interviews ahead of his book release? No, 86%. Yes, 13%. So obviously, on the Royal Roundup, we do these polls every week. And it's funny, when we've asked similar questions before, if it was 6 months ago, the poll actually would be a lot more, balanced. But obviously, this is one of many, many interviews that they've given. What is different about these interviews than Cam that we've seen little glimpses of in comparison to other interviews that he's given so far? And what can we expect?
Well, I think there's going to be a longer list of similarities, to be honest, Pandora. I mean, clearly we've only got 2 snippets, 60 seconds worth of an hour interview in CBS's case and 90-minute interview in ITV's case. We don't know exactly what Prince Harry says, but it seems to be going along the same narrative of he's accusing Buckingham Palace of colluding with the press when it comes to leaking and planting of stories, his war with the media, but also kind of wanting to reconcile at some point with his brother and his father, King Charles. I think there will be a lot of facts which he will give, which will be talked about within his book at great detail. We've already spoken about his experience with Diana, Princess of Wales's death. We've talked about the Sandringham summit, but I think we'll get a lot more about his experience growing up. If you remember, he served 2 tours of Afghanistan. It's easy to forget with all this noise following Megxit, but he did serve the British people, this country in Afghanistan. He did put his life on the line, on the front line. And on the first tour of which he had to be pulled out pretty quickly because an international publication broke an embargo, agrees between Buckingham Palace and the media that in order to protect Prince Harry's safety and not make him a target for the enemy, they wouldn't reveal that he was serving on the front line in Afghanistan. There's an international media broke that embargo, and therefore he had to be pulled out for his own safety. And that deeply, deeply affected Prince Harry and is just another nail in the coffin in terms of Prince Harry's war against the media.
So his thoughts towards the media in general then it is pretty negative, but then he gives 2 media interviews away. What's interesting, obviously, is the fact that he's given it to Tom over at ITV, who famously asked Meghan how she was in that interview. But he's also worked with William for many years. So will this just damage that brotherly relationship even further?
Yeah, Tom Bradbury is the former royal correspondent, actually, for ITV News. He now presents ITV News at 10. And you're right, he did that documentary in 2019 when Harry and Meghan were still working members of the royal family on a tour in South Africa, and famously asked Meghan how she was feeling, talking about her mental health, and basically said, "Are you okay, Meghan?" And Meghan said, "Thank you for asking." But Tom's relationship with Harry goes back a lot further than that. They first got to know each other when Prince Harry was on a gap year following Eton. He did a documentary, I think, on Lesotho, which is a country in Africa. And he was also invited to Harry and Meghan's wedding. So they do have a relationship. But equally, I think the criticism of that is perhaps, we don't know because we haven't seen the interview, but I think a lot of people are worried that Tom's going to perhaps give Harry a bit of an easy ride and perhaps not challenge some of the allegations which Harry are going to tell him. Clearly, we don't know that, and we may well see on Sunday that Tom does challenge a lot of some of what Prince Harry is saying. But clearly, Harry trusts him enough to to think that Tom is not going to throw him under a bus, so to speak.
Okay. Scotia says he did not put his life on the line. He was surrounded by security. What do you say?
Not when he was in the army.
No. Well, there you go. That's an answer for you then. Okay, so we're speaking about Prince Harry's relationship with the media. I think we should get the poll up now, which says, will you be reading this book? As that's what we're speaking about predominantly today. So if we can bring that poll up. No, 89%, yes, 10%. Do you think this is a reflection then, Cam, of the fact that people think that they've heard it all before?
Possibly, perhaps. I think the British public in particular, but also to some extent the United States, are growing weary of this, narrative that I'm the victim and my life is terrible living in a $10 million mansion in Montecito, California. We've seen a number of photos saying that the book's on half price sale already, and it's not even out yet. Clearly, the publishers have paid Prince Harry millions of dollars for a 4-book deal. And we'll just have to wait and see whether or not they make a profit. I think it's too early to jump to conclusions that people are not going to read the book. I think when the first sales figures come out, that's when we can truly judge if the book has been a success, and indeed if people are still genuinely interested in what Prince Harry has to say. But the book's not out yet. Yes, there's been some pre-sale of it where people can pre-buy the book for delivery on January 10th. But I think we'll have to wait on that one.
Yeah, we will indeed. Mary says, no way would Harry do the Tom Bradbury interview if he knew there was real questions asked. It was all like if Harry's interviews were pre-scripted. Lots of people have said this about Oprah as well. We know Oprah can very much hold people to account in previous interviews, but in the interview with Harry and Meghan, it was very much telling their side of the story. And some criticism of that, which is no actual reflection on Oprah, because I think she's a fantastic journalist, can I just say? But a lot of people have said that she didn't push enough. Who do you think Harry and Meghan will listen to then, if they're not listening to Buckingham Palace, if they don't listen to the media? Who are they really going to be taking advice from now and opinion from?
Well, they have a PR team in the United States, but I think what they're really going to listen to is perhaps if people in the United States genuinely stop listening, and if the book deals dry up, or if the media appearances dry up because they are no longer sellable with their royal brand, that's going to be a real problem for Harry and Meghan. We've heard rumours that perhaps Meghan wants to dabble a little bit in politics. Clearly that's unconfirmed, but perhaps that's going to be their next step. But again, it's all about popularity and all about image, particularly in Hollywood, California. I mean, I'm no Hollywood expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm royals, but it's two very separate entities, I think. And at the moment, they're very much going down the route of a Hollywood A-list celebrity PR strategy rather than that of members of the royal family.
And that's what makes them different, right, to the working members, senior members of the royal family. Lorraine, if we all ignore them, they'll go away. As if there was no money in it, it's not worth it. Well, Lorraine, maybe so, but people love talking about them, don't they? Whether you are not a fan of what they're up to, whether you are a fan of what they're up to, everyone's got an opinion on them, and they are most certainly making most of that with all these book deals. Okay, lots of people are saying that there should be more repercussions for Harry and Meghan now that they're slamming the royal family, the institution, perhaps revealing a few of the secrets of how Buckingham Palace works in their eyes. When do you think, obviously, King Charles will take any more action, and will it ever happen?
Well, King Charles doesn't have a lot of powers in order to take any definitive action against perhaps Harry and Meghan, because they no longer receive any money from him. The only thing King Charles can really do is block all contact with Harry and Meghan. A lot of people are talking about or urging King Charles to take away Harry and Meghan's royal titles of Duke and Duchess of Sussex. They no longer, of course, use their HRH titles. The late Queen took away their Prince Harry's military appointments and the royal patronages that they both received from her. But it takes an act of parliament to remove royal titles. The last time that happened was in 1917 with the Titles Deprivation Act, which is what King George V had to give royal assent to take away titles of German princes and German royalty. Of course, Great Britain was at war with Germany in 1917. So it would need an amendment to that act in 1917, and that requires MPs to do. There is a bill going through Parliament at the moment. I think it's Rachel Maskell, who's a Labour MP, to give the king more powers to take away titles, or a parliamentary committee, but that's still very much going through the stages at the moment. But in terms of King Charles's powers, there's not really a lot he can do other than just totally cut off any contact.
Obviously, King Charles is extremely close with his wife Camilla. She very much stands in the background, but seeing more of her in a very much public-facing role, which is very different than what it would have been a few years ago in terms of public popularity as well. Do we have any indicator of how she feels towards Meghan and Harry? Because at one point, the public opinion on her was very, very different too.
Oh, it was. I mean, it is well known, and the king, well, then Prince Charles, openly admitted that he did have an affair with Camilla Parker Bowles when he was married to Diana, Princess of Wales. So clearly that would have put a strain on Prince Harry's relationship with Camilla. But since then, the then Duchess of Cornwall, now Queen Consort, has done brilliant work with charities within the United Kingdom. She's patron of a number of them. She's particularly focused on children's literacy, on dogs, on animals, on horses. The Queen grew very fond of her, the late Queen, to the point where she said it was her express wish that Camilla would one day be known as Queen Consort. Clearly, we don't know the private relationships of senior members of the royal family between each other. I think it was clear to see that Prince Harry and the then Duchess of Cornwall got on pretty well when he was a working member of the royal family publicly, but clearly we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. But it's very clear that the king is devoted to his wife Camilla, which is why we're seeing her going to be crowned in Westminster Abbey alongside him in May.
Indeed. And can we expect Harry and Meghan to be there supporting them both?
Oh, if only I had a crystal ball, Pandora. To be honest, I think it honestly depends on what's in this book that we're going to be reading next week and what he says in these interviews. There's been a lot of noise. If the book is it until after coronation, and the book isn't as damning as we appear to be hyping it up to be, I think there's several sources of what's going to be said in this book, then perhaps. Because I think the king genuinely still loves his son and daughter-in-law and would want to see him at his coronation. But I think the problem for palace courtiers is that does it then become the Harry and Meghan show? If you remember back to the Duke of Edinburgh's memorial service, I think it was last year, Prince Andrew escorted the late Queen to her seat. And then instead of all the headlines being about what a wonderful man Prince Philip was, it was all about Prince Andrew escorts the Queen. And I think the king will be very much aware that if Harry and Meghan appear at the coronation, then will that overshadow his coronation? Who knows? But that's clearly the worry.
Indeed. And obviously this coronation would have been in the planning for many, many months, wouldn't it, Cam? Do you think that perhaps it will see some of the late Queen's wishes also played out?
Many months, many years, perhaps, Pandora, as well, because obviously King Charles was the heir apparent for 70 years, so they would have had some kind of plan in place. I think it's very much going to reflect the wishes of the new king, King Charles, rather than that of the late Queen Elizabeth II, although I'm sure she would have had perhaps some input into that ceremony. It's understood the ceremony is going to reflect modern Britain. It's perhaps going to be shorter than Queen Elizabeth II's was in 1953, because that went on for about 3 hours. And I don't think the attention spans of the British public nowadays in the year 2023 is going to be quite as long as that. But the traditional pomp and ceremony of Great Britain, the crowning, the anointing, all these 1,000-year-old traditions are very much still going to be a part of it, with the military services and processions that's going to happen either side of a coronation within Westminster Abbey. The king is going to have to declare an oath during the service, because that is tradition, what is required in a coronation ceremony. And I think perhaps in that we will get a sense of a modern king fit for the 21st century in the year 2023, perhaps talking about other religions. Clearly, it's going to be very much an Anglican service, as it pretty much always has been for a very long time. But I think he is going to reflect modern Britain in that.
Okay, so that gives a little bit of an indicator of what we can expect in May. And perhaps maybe we'll see Harry and Meghan, maybe we won't. We have got a few comments which you guys sent to us before we went live today about Harry and Meghan and in the release of the book. So let's have a quick look at them. This is to do with stripping the titles, which you have clarified for us on the Royal Roundup today, Cam. I do believe he should, however, I also believe he should and should not. Parliament will have to do it, and the King will have to agree. Yeah. It would be disastrous for the palace to do it. A lot of people are saying actually more action would just shine a light on the situation even further through a magnifying glass as well. So that's interesting, Erin. Let's have a look at the next one. There will be a time when the King will need to take action, but not just yet. Let the Sussexes dig themselves deeper into the pit first. What can on that note, Cam, after the book, what can we expect to hear of Harry and Meghan? Because I guess they have quite literally spoken about everything that they could about the royal family. Will it now sort of delving themselves into charity work? What next for them?
I think that's perhaps the hope. I think it's going to be a big challenge for Harry and Meghan to get out of this victim narrative, which they've been playing over the last year and a half, albeit with some charity work thrown in. But I think if the opinion polls are to improve, I think perhaps they are going to have to really throw themselves into charity work, humanitarian work. They have their Archwell Foundation, which is their charitable arm, and they have donated to a lot of worthy causes and have made a difference. But a lot of that has not really got much pickup and publicity because it's really because of all the noise created by their many media appearances talking about their experience when they were working members of the royal family and the subsequent fallout. So I think perhaps that's the way forward, because I don't see how the shelf life of this victim narrative that they're painting is going to last for much longer, unless there's anything else that we have not heard at all before that's very specific or very newsworthy. There's only so long regurgitating the same complaints is going to last.
Obviously, they are based now on the other side of the Atlantic. If you're watching from America on Catch Up, hello. They still have a lease, don't they, in the UK? So
yes,
would that maybe indicate they would be coming back more? Do tell me, Cam.
Yeah, so they do have a base in the UK, Frogmore Cottage, which was paid for, the redevelopment of it was paid for by British taxpayers with £2.5 million, I think it was, when they got married in 2018. All of the money has been paid back by Harry and Meghan when they stood back as working members of the royal family. But yes, they do still lease out Frogmore Cottage when they do return to the UK. It's understood they stayed there during the Queen's funeral and national mourning period. Of course, they were in there doing a couple of charity events just before the late Queen passed away as well. So yes, they do have a base and they can come back to the UK whenever they want, really. But they haven't, as far as I understand it, come back since the Queen's funeral.
Okay, so there's no indicator of them thinking, let's just switch back to the UK anytime soon.
Not as it stands, no. I think they're pretty happy in California at the moment.
I would be too if I lived in a house like that. That's my opinion. Okay, but then again, I'd be quite happy with a little cottage too. Okay, enough about Harry and Meghan now. Let's also talk about another member of the royal family who made headlines over Christmas, and also quite a few other headlines in the past couple of years on various matters. Prince Andrew has come back into the mix. What's the latest on this, Cam?
Yes, well, he unexpectedly appeared at the Sandringham Christmas Day service alongside other members of the royal family. He was very much on public view. I mean, myself as a royal reporter, and I'm sure several others, were saying it's extremely unlikely that we'll see him on Christmas Day. He's not a working member of the royal family. And lo and behold, he appears behind working members of the royal family, but nonetheless still very much there. He spoke to members of the public and even suggested to one lady to keep warm, she should stand on a bit of newspaper, because apparently that will keep you warm and insulate you. I have no idea if that's correct, but that's reportedly what Prince Andrew told a lady in the crowd.
Did he indicate what newspaper?
That would be good to know, wouldn't it? Yeah, no, he did not go into that specific. Hopefully it wasn't the Daily Express.
Well, we should hope not. We should.
Yeah, but it was, it was very much, he wants, I think, he's very damaged by the fact he cannot be a working member of the royal family anymore. It's extremely unlikely that he will ever return to the public coalface, as it were. King Charles, if reports are to be believed, is no longer paying for his security. He's having to fund that himself. He doesn't have police protection, I believe, anymore, at least not 24-hour protection, which is what he used to have. But he's still very much staying in the Windsor estate. He's still there in a house, living with his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson, spending a lot of time horse riding and retirement almost, I suppose. But I think he is still perhaps bitter that he's no longer a working member of the royal family. But he was there at the church service. It didn't completely overshadow events, so it wouldn't surprise me now if we see him at similar family gatherings, but not official working royal ones.
So Dana said, furthermore, Andrew is still standing beneath what has been swept under the rug and the microscope. Obviously, we won't go into details about that, but you can switch across to the Daily Express website to have a look at what Dana's indicating there. And could it be brought back out, unfortunately? Cam, can we expect any more details, as that case was closed, wasn't it?
Is this for the Virginia Giuffre case? Yes. So it was pretty much a year ago, actually, that Prince Andrew settled out of court in this civil case against him, and he's denied all the allegations that Virginia Giuffre alleged. And they've settled out of court. He paid money. We don't know the exact sum, but as far as he is concerned and the palace is concerned and lawyers are concerned, the case is closed. So I doubt we're going to get any more details on that specific case. But of course, it's clearly extremely damaged his reputation. And the Newsnight interview of Emily Maitlis in 2019, where he failed to show empathy to any of Jeffrey Epstein's, the late convicted sex offenders victims. He failed to show any empathy towards them, and that equally damaged his reputation.
Indeed. Okay, well, all lights are on the royal family right now, and they will be for the foreseeable. Cam, thank you for bringing us all the information this week on the Royal Roundup. You're going to be very busy in the lead up to the publication date and the release. So yes, best of luck with it all. And thank you for coming on the Royal Roundup today. I really do appreciate it over at GB News. And we will be back next week for another episode of the Royal Roundup. You can catch all of the episodes over on our playlist on Facebook. If you're watching on Twitter, hello. If you're watching on Instagram, hello. If you're watching on YouTube, hello. We are back every week. Just keep an eye on your socials where we can confirm a time and a date. Cam, once again, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.